Okay, so just to start off, what is the state of safety on UND's campus, and what metrics are used to determine this?
Um, do you have a time period in mind that you're
Just
thinking?
within the past year.
Okay. Safety within the past year, we're average, along what we normally see throughout the course of the university as long as I've been here. The metrics that we use come from statistical analysis. So how many runs are we taking? What types of runs are they? What kind of cases are we seeing filed? What's happening on real UND property? Those are generated through calls and responses. A lot of them you can see in the crime log. If you compare the crime logs from year to year, you're not seeing large upticks. What I tell people is that crime varies in variety, doesn't usually vary very much in number. So you may have, for instance, an example, 100 cases in 2022 and 75 of them are minor crimes. 2023 might be 110 cases where 50 of them are minor crimes. So like the severity changes, but the number stays about the same. So not an uptick. Severity is about what's expected for where we're at.
Okay, and what is significant about the area that we're located in that would make us, because some students have expressed concerns over safety on campus, so what can students know about the area that UND is in that would better help them understand that?
You're a geographic anomaly. And what that means is that where UND sits, it's protected by just the way the school's positioned, the way the police department works, the way that we move within our community. Mm-hmm. When you get outside of that, you're in southeast Indianapolis. With the red line, you start to see more and more types of people coming on to campus that aren't from UND, right? Directly behind UND, we have several of the, like the Saturn Blood Center. We have, for some of the social services that are distributed are right behind UND. We're not too far from Garfield Park, which does a lot with the homeless community in UND. We're also in between what are transit routes, which basically means that 65 and Keystone and 465 and Meridian we sit right between the two. And then you add the red line in the middle. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of transient style clientele that come through. They'll come off of a highway, go back to a highway. They'll come off the red line, go back to the red line. Right. So what that means is if you're on UND, you're staying in the UND area and University Heights and places like that, you're pretty good. If you go outside of that, you're interacting with people that are from everywhere, from all over. And transient crime is a real thing. Some of the crime that we see is opportunistic because you can get to UND and get out of UND rather quickly.
Right, and so talking about this past year, what significant crime incidents have occurred in the past year, and how are they handled by UND police, and could they have been prevented? I know that's kind of three questions in one. Sorry, we can take it one by one.
The most significant are break-ins. I think that's hands down what has to be the elephant in the room, right? How they're handled by us is that they're just pursued relentlessly, meaning that we overturn every stone we can to try to find the person that did the break-in. Are they preventable? Yes. The majority of the break-ins that we see at UND are preventable, and here's what I mean by that. The majority of the break-ins happen from people that we let into our spaces. Withstanding the break-in in GV, which was completely exterior, right? A lot of the break-ins that we see have been let into our property, or we've left something unsecured, or we haven't locked our things, or we've left desirable items within view of somebody who would want to steal it. In that sense, they're preventable. As far as the infrastructure goes, there's a strong infrastructure there with the Verkada cameras, the Seaboard cameras. We have some new systems coming, which are going to be even better for us. But yeah, it would be the break-ins. And I think in some ways, just based upon the way that we're polite, we're the Midwest, right? It's Indiana. A lot of us come from hold the door open for the person behind you, say hi, say good morning. Well, sometimes that person behind you may not be a UND community member, and they might just be looking to cause a break-in or something like that.
Yeah, and so you describe there's going to be some new developments in terms
Mm-hmm.
of safety tools on campus. Would you be willing to expand a little bit on that?
So we're looking to upgrade camera systems in a little bit, meaning that the 4 big cameras that you see out in the parking lots that have the blue lights on them, we're gonna bring in what's called like a flock safety system. It's a better camera system. It tracks vehicles. We can start to pick up on when traffic comes in, when it goes out, things like that. There'll be a larger announcement coming, so I want to give the university the chance to put together the announcement that they're going to put in. But it should go to show as a sign that we actively pursue the best that we can as we move forward. We've also are looking into updating our investigation database systems. So there are systems that are basic, and then there are systems that are very robust. We're looking at a system that's very robust, where when we type in a name or we type in a lead, we get several leads generated from doing so. So we're making investments into safety and security, and I think we always will. And one thing I want to lean into on that is a lot of those suggestions come from community concerns and community feedback. So we welcome the feedback, and we want that to continue.
Yeah, and so you recently began acting as the police chief of UND Police. So how long have you been acting chief?
I've been acting chief since December 5th. So what's that, 4 months? A little over.
Give or take.
5 months, something like that. Yeah. Somewhere in there. Yes.
And so describe your career at UND Police. Where did you start and how did you get where you are now?
Sure. I came from the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, where I spent just under a decade as a deputy sheriff for Johnson County. Came to UND in 2015 as an officer. Became a sergeant in 2016. Created an investigations division, created the Cadet Academy, piloted a lot of initiatives to try to move the agency forward. Was promoted to lieutenant in 2018. At that point, I took over command of all the officers. So the investigations divisions, we created an emergency response team. Of course, I mentioned the cadet programs, the honor guards, all of that fell under my purview, basically. At that time, completed 2 degrees here, got an undergrad, got a master's degree from here. Just continued clicking along, trying to make UND a little bit safer as we could. You don't have much control in mid-level management, but you have a little bit of control. Tried to start some initiatives. In December, when I was fortunate enough to become the acting chief, we kicked in a lot of initiatives that had been waiting. The substation, Coffee with a Cop, a lot of more community engagement, even in your area, spending more time with UND TV and the Reflector and student media, just to try to get our face out there and say, here's who we are. We appreciate you guys. We want to spend time around you because you're the greatest asset we have and you're what we're supposed to protect. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so before you were acting chief, it was Chief David Selby.
Yes.
And so what was the cause of the changing leadership in the UND Police Department?
He retired.
Okay.
So Dave Selby, he'll go down as one of the better university police chiefs that Indiana's had. He was the police chief of Kokomo IU. He was the police chief of Butler PD. He was the police chief here. He had over 30 years in law enforcement. When you're been in it that long and you're that old and you start to realize that cruises and vacations with the family seem to be a little more enjoyable than coming to work and you're able to retire, you lean into that option. And I think, he had an admirable service and he just retired. He was ready to retire and he didn't leave under any negative circumstances at all. He was just, it's December, I'm going to retire come January. And that's what he did. And I was fortunate to work underneath him and learn a lot about university law enforcement, learn a lot about the differences because I came from municipality to a university. And it's been great because I can blend the two. Municipality is very community oriented and heavy, and university is, there's a lot of federal guidelines you have to follow and also community heavy as well. So it was great to work under him and if he wants to come back and have lunch and give me more tips, I'm in.
Absolutely. So, how you mentioned at the beginning that we're pretty average in terms of, I guess, crime rates and the types of crimes that occur on campus. How does the safety of the UIndy campus compare with peer institutions in Indiana, so other universities?
I don't have all the data before me on those, and it's hard to compare them when you consider UIndy's unique size and where it's located. We're 70 acres. You go to Butler, it's 300 acres. You go to IU, it's 9 college systems or however many more it is. If you go to Marion, they're pretty closely related in size and shape and where we're at. And we don't see that we are performing sub to them or that they're performing sub to us. I think most of the universities that reside within the Indianapolis area have that exterior boundary that has an element of crime. And our job is to keep it as far away as we can. When I say average, that's a year-over-year thing. We don't see more crime in 21 than we saw in 22. We don't see more in 22 than we saw in 23. We might see a severity change, but we don't see a change in like the numbers. The last big jump, I guess, to be transparent and put myself on the hot seat, the largest jump we saw in crime was the implementation of the red line. When it came in, the crime jumped a little bit.
Right, and so in 2021, Fox 59 reported that UIndy had recently spent around $500,000 on enhanced public safety. So how much would you say UIndy spends on keeping employees and students safe, and how are those funds allocated to enhance public safety?
I'm not sure all the areas that it spends. I know the number that they put out, a lot of that was infrastructure upgrade. So additional vehicles, we added officers, we added the mobile cameras that you see out there for surveillance. Where we spend money now is better use of resources. Do we have the best investigation data system? Are we utilizing the camera systems the best we can? What is the control access look like for information coming in and out? How do we secure the buildings? And and you see that as you move, you see it happen incrementally, where Switzer will shut down at 9 o'clock and it's card swipe only. Or where the athletics, we're talking about, securing that better. So it happens, the money is allocated to what I would say prioritized and executed. So if we see a priority problem, that's where we tend to focus for that moment. And when that's solved, you move to the next. Yeah. But I'm low level in those conversations, so I should add that.
Would you know anybody who might know more that I could talk to?
How it's allocated? Previously would have been Rob Manuel or Jason Dudich. Currently, I would say you probably either reach out to Andrea or Jody Faris. They would probably have a better idea of how it's allocated, but it's pretty much everything it's request and approval. So you request things and it gets put in front of a financial committee, and the financial committee approves or denies based upon where we're at in the university's budget cycle.
Yeah, and so you've mentioned a lot of initiatives to enhance public safety, new systems coming in. What do you think could further be done to improve campus safety overall?
Community relationships. We got to build the bridge. We've got to get closer to each other and stronger together. You can have the greatest system you want in place that is tip of the spear, cutting edge, crime prevention. But if you and I don't talk to each other, it really doesn't matter. I mean, public safety isn't old. It's something new that we've been talking about for hundreds of years. And the safest communities are the communities that integrate together and work together. And I know you, and you know me, and I know your community, and we know the ins and outs of how our community works. And what that happens is, think about Mayberry, if you can think about the old TV shows. You couldn't commit a crime in Mayberry that the sheriff didn't know about. It wasn't because the sheriff was there for every crime. It was because everybody knew the sheriff. More importantly, everybody trusted the sheriff. They knew if they went to Andy, that Andy was going to help them out. That's where we have to get back to. We have to build the trust and the bond to where I'm not going to be in every building at every minute of every hour of the year. But if you trust me and you know me, you're likely when something happens to come tell me. And that's really what crime prevention is. That's what it is to have that better public safety perception and awareness, is us getting closer to each other and us being more integrated and working together. I would love to go from having 14 officers to having 7,000 officers, if you can think about it that way.
Yeah, and so you recently put out a document that describes like the differences between a public service announcement, a timely warning, and an emergency notification like Watchdog. For people in the Unity community who might not still grasp what that means, could you go more into detail about the differences and the limitations of those three?
Absolutely. Two of them are federal law. Timely warning and the emergency notification are required by the Clery Act. Previous to me taking over and working with the new leadership with Phil Terry and Andrea and everybody else and Garrison, we would do the timely warnings and the emergency notifications. Those are what were required by law. They have certain stipulations you have to meet before you can send them out. For example, a timely warning has to affect the entire community, and it has to be a certain crime that was committed, and you have to have certain information to put it out. So has to be a Clery crime, have to have a description, have to have a path of travel that they're going to, and it has to affect the entire community. So if you have a break-in in lofts with no suspect information, you really don't have enough. Right? Because a break-in may not necessarily be a Clery crime until we figure out whether or not it falls underneath the definition. We don't have suspect information, so we got to spend some time finding out who the suspect is. We don't know that it's a continuing threat to the entire university because we don't know if the person's still here or not. So there's a lot of questions that are like, oh man, did we send a timely warning? I don't know. Emergency notification has to be happening right now. A threat to campus right now, the whole community. It's like a shelter in place. It's we have an active aggressor on campus, we have something big moving through campus, stay away from this area, shelter in place. So it's like an immediate. Those don't solve.
So like something like an active shooter, for example.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you'll hear me say active aggressor as we move towards, and all that is that new trends in law enforcement show us that they don't have to be a shooter. They could use a lot of different elements and be just as effective as an active shooter in their mission. Those two metrics, the timely warning and the emergency notification, don't necessarily solve for that break-in, right? We've got the break-in. We don't know if it's a Clery crime. We don't know if it's a continuing threat to the campus community. We don't know anything. But the community is telling us through the app and through social media and talking to each other that there's a big break-in. Well, why aren't the police saying anything? Why isn't the campus saying anything? How come we don't know about this? Do we need to be worried? Do we not need to be worried? So we sat down and intentionally looked at solving that. Like, how do we get that information out quicker, even if it doesn't meet the timely warning or it doesn't meet the emergency notification? Well, that's where the public safety announcement comes from. That's where it's like, okay, we know that this is going on in this area. We know that we're responding to it, and we know that we may or may not need to put out some information about it. But we can go ahead and send this out and say, hey, there is a break-in on this location at the university, and here's a crime tip. You know, check your surroundings, be aware, so report suspicious activity, right? We didn't meet the timely warning, but we've kind of, sort of tried to fulfill the university demands, the community demands, right? So it was a gateway, it was a bridge. Now, with that, sometimes, means that you put out more information than you used to, which can look like more crime than there used to be. Not necessarily the case, we're just being more intentional about our communications about what's going on.
Yeah, and so why is what UIPD does so important to campus life?
We're the gatekeeper that allows you to be focused on your education. And truly that's what it is. We're the reassurance. so that you can focus on doing the investigative reporting, putting me in the hot seat and making me sweat.
I hope not.
No, not at all. But that's why we exist. Is we're in a position in the city where you need your own police department. You have to have it. We can't rely on IMPD or other agencies to come in and help with every situation. We need to be self-sufficient and do so. And our main focus is that, when you come in your freshman year, we make a relationship with you, we get to know you, and we celebrate when you walk across the stage your senior year. Those are some of the greatest moments of me being at UIndy, is seeing people that I've met their freshman year or their sophomore year, when they walk across the stage and they graduate and they walk by me in a reception line, they're like, hey, and I'm like, I know, right? You made it. I'm shocked too.
Never thought it would happen.
But I think that's what we're here for. We're here so that you can focus on learning. We'll focus on everything else.
Yeah, and so could you explain in detail how dispatching works? Like how, if we call 911, if there's this incident on campus, how long does it take for UIPD to be dispatched to a crime scene?
It varies, and it varies based upon severity. So if you call because there's geese on the track and they need to come off the track, it is not going to be dispatched as fast as if you call and say there is an active burglary. Someone has broken into my home, they're in my home right now. The severity levels are way different. So one of those are going to get pushed out immediately. And the benefit to the 911 system is when that gets pushed out, it gets pushed out to everybody. And what I mean by everybody is IMPD, Beech Grove, Homecroft, Southport, UIPD, anybody in the area. So if I'm busy and the other officer on UND is busy, but the Metro cars aren't, they know that run's happening. They're coming. This run over here, the geese on the track, right, little lower. So it can pinned to the active break-in, okay? So where this might get a 10-minute response time, this one might have a 30, 40-minute response time. And depending on who made the call, it's objective as to which one was more important. You know what I mean? So that's where you get these variances on dispatch times. The dispatch process varies by severity as well. So when you call 911 and they say, what's your emergency? And you tell them where you're at, they log where you're at. They ask specific questions they ask, and then they rank it. Is it a priority 1, 2, 3, 4? How does it work? They then shift that over to a dispatcher or a controller. That person then uploads it and puts it into the CAD system and then issues out the run. The runs, think about it being a log, 1 through 10. I issued run number 1 first, then number 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, and 10. So that's what creates the delay. Also, the phone call. A lot of people, a minute's a long time if you sit and wait for a minute. If you make a phone call at 5:55, it's a minute, 2.5 minutes that you're on the phone with dispatch. They go through the process I told you, that's 2.5 minutes, whatever it might be. It sits in a queue based on severity that could take another couple minutes, and then it's dispatched out, and then we have travel time. Where's the officer at? Where are they coming from? What are they going to do? So the national standard is 12 to 17 minutes. UIndy is usually sub 10, often sub 5. It just depends on busyness of the day, severity of the crime, how fast it came out. But when I hear someone say, it took 12 minutes to get to my door, okay, so we made it to your door in the fastest national average time, 12 minutes. Because there is delays there. There's no direct line to the police officer to their cell phone. It would be impossible. And here's the negative side of that. If I gave you my cell phone number, right, and there was a crime going on and you called, well, I'm in an interview with you right now. I'm not paying attention to my cell phone because I want time with you to be valuable, right? So now you can't get a hold of me. So you call the other officer. Well, I just so happen to know the other officer's training somebody right now. So he may not answer his phone because he's focused and intentional about the time he has with a new recruit. In both scenarios, you didn't get a hold of us any faster. But 911, that interrupts me on my shoulder. It interrupts the radio. It says, hey, whatever you're doing, stop doing. You need to go out and do this. Additionally, you would not want a scenario by which you have an active aggressor and everyone's calling a cell phone. You want them calling 911. And then you want that going to every active police officer listening to that radio so that they can get here as fast as they can. It has a delay. It has an acceptable delay. It does take some time, but it's a necessary system.
Yeah, and so what would you say to students who might feel unsafe on campus because of recent crime incidents like the JV break-ins and such?
A couple different things. One is, unfortunately, crime is a part of everyday life, and it's not an excuse for it. But we have a lot that we can do individually to prevent crime. We can take active stances on how we secure our belongings. We can be intentional about where we're going to park, how we're going to secure our doors. Is your common area space in your residence hall locked? Or is it open and you just lock your door? That's an issue. Is your car locked? Do you leave it locked? Do you walk north, south, east, west of campus at 1 a.m. in the morning? You know, some of the decisions we make are important about the crime prevention. The other thing I would say is, have you reached out and talked to us? Have you come and asked me, hey, how dangerous is it? I'll walk with you on campus. I'll go wherever you want to go and talk about everything that's there. I'm going to learn just as much from you and any other student on the university as you're going to learn from me. So if we have where we say, I just think this area is completely unsafe, well, let's go. Let's go to that area. I want to see it. I want to feel it. I want to know your experiences, because my experiences are different, right? And then the other thing would be, what can we do that makes you feel better? So sometimes I think we get in the habit of making the mistake of thinking that we have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I got like a third of the answers. I'm a C average student, right? So you probably have an idea that is really, really good, an amazing idea to help everybody feel safe. And I just haven't heard it yet. But I'm willing to hear it, willing to listen. The PSA, the Public Safety Announcement, Public Safety Advisory, that's direct from feedback given on the app. I prefer to have been in my email address versus the app, but directly from information from the app. So if you feel unsafe and there's something that can be done to make you feel safe, please reach out. Let's start the conversation and talk to each other.
Yeah, and how can students interact closely with UIPD?
They can email police@und.edu. They can email me directly, pateb@und.edu. They can come to the police department. It's across from Fifth Third Bank. Walk in during business hours. Hey, I'd like to talk to the chief. If I'm there, I'll talk to you. 208, we have some hours that we staff in here. We'll try to increase a few of those, but that's one way to do it as well. And also, stop any officer. It takes nothing to walk up to an officer and say, hey, can I talk to you a little bit about safety on campus? Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about it. I know they look intimidating, but they're all softies. Just go up and talk to them. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
Come to coffee with a cop, please. I don't like throwing coffee away, so come to coffee with a cop.
Yeah, and so is there anything else that I have not asked you that you would like, the community to know?
Every time I get asked that question, I think you asked it to me once before, the same thing comes to my mind. We're not against you. We're Greyhounds. All of us are. The majority of that university graduated from UIndy. They're UIndy Greyhound. I'm a 2-time Greyhound. My wife's a Greyhound. My daughter will go here. We care about this community and this university. So we're not against you. We're all on the same team and we're aligned together. We just don't know you. And that's what we got to fix. We got to get to know you a little better.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Very welcome.
And for your answers today.
You're welcome.